15 years ago, a world-renowned architect planned to bring the Spire to Chicago, a giant luxury condo building with sky-high prices. All these years later, all we have is a hole in the ground at a prime spot by the river and the lake.
This is the Chicago Spire. It was set to be the second tallest building on Earth right after the Burj Khalifa. Most Americans have never heard what happened to it. $2 billion, a 76-foot pit, over 15 years completely empty. Where was the financing for a $2 billion tower supposed to come from before the building ever rose? How does anyone engineer a foundation meant to hold up one of the tallest buildings on Earth? Who's still on the hook for money that was borrowed but never built into anything? Why did control of a Chicago skyline end up in the hands of a bank 6,000 miles away? And why did nobody involved ever have to explain what went wrong? The answers start with how big this was supposed to be. In 2005, Chicago was still defending its claim as the birthplace of the skyscraper. The Sears Tower today, known as the Willis Tower, had held the title of tallest building in the country since 1973. A few blocks south, Donald Trump had just broken ground on his own tower, a 1,360-foot condo and hotel project set to become the city's second tallest once finished. But plans were already being drawn up for something bigger, a tower that would break records again and give America its first true megatall skyscraper. At 2,000 feet, it would rank second in the world, only behind the rising Burj Dubai, later renamed the Burj Khalifa. In the Americas, this tower would stand alone at the top. Developer Christopher Carley was behind the project chairman of a company called Fordham, and he unveiled his 115-story design under the name Fordham Spire, just 4 years after the September 11th attacks, at a moment when some in the industry were still questioning whether anyone would build tall again. Its design came from Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava, who shaped the tower into a twisting corkscrew above Lake Michigan. Each floor rotated just over 2 degrees from the one below. It marketed to buyers before a single shovel touched the ground. It won unanimous approval from the Chicago Plan Commission, the city's zoning board, and the city council alike. Alderman Burton Nataras called it a unique opportunity that belonged to Chicago. Mayor Richard Daley praised the design as environmentally friendly. Within months, though, Carley's company ran out of money to keep the project going. Garrett Kelleher, an Irish businessman who took over the project in 2006 and renamed it the Chicago Spire, pledged to fund the entire tower himself through his company, Shelbourne Development, over 1,000 luxury condominiums, priced from $750,000 to $15 million each, with 10-foot ceilings and curved glass walls facing the lake. The redesign under Kelleher would eventually grow the tower to 150 stories. Not everyone had been convinced. Years earlier, when the tower was first proposed, Trump said it plainly: "In this climate, I would not want to build that building, nor would I want to live in that building. Any bank that would put up money to build a building like that would be insane." Carley, the original developer, had an answer ready. "I wonder where the insanity limit is. It must be just over 1,360 feet. None of it stopped the project. Construction crews broke ground in June 2007. That was the plan. This is what actually happened. The foundation came first, a massive circular hole 76 feet deep, supported by concrete caissons drilled straight down to bedrock. Inside it, engineers planned to build the tower's circular core with helical floor plates, cantilevering outward from the center, each one twisted just over 2 degrees from the floor below. It was one of the most ambitious structural systems ever proposed for a residential tower, designed to make an entire 150-story building appear to spiral against the sky. Its condominiums stacked inside a single twisting frame. Engineers had to solve unusually large forces at every connection point, a challenge no super-tall building had faced this way before, and their calculations held. Kelleher had never built anything close to it. His construction background was mostly building renovations, nothing over 15 stories, and he had never delivered a project anywhere near this scale. Now he was financing a tower of this scale almost entirely through a single lender, Anglo-Irish bank, at the peak of a real estate bubble that was already showing cracks. His own sales strategy leaned on the same optimism, a $10 million show suite built inside NBC Tower to sell condos, years before the building itself would exist. By the time the first concrete was poured, Kelleher's companies already owed Anglo-Irish Bank roughly $600 million across his various projects, with about $90 million of that tied directly to the Spire site alone. The tower's foundation was solid, engineered to hold up one of the tallest buildings on the planet. The financing underneath it was not. Then the ground shifted under the entire financial system.
We are in the midst of a serious financial crisis.
We bid up houses too high, we borrowed too much money from foreigners to finance it. The banks became involved in risky loans. The economy is genuinely in crisis.
It is definitely a very, very difficult time, and it's not going to get better quickly.
By late 2008, the global financial crisis hit. Anglo-Irish Bank stock lost nearly all its value within weeks, and the bank itself was headed toward nationalization by the Irish government. Construction on the Spire stopped almost immediately, with the site little more than a hole and a partially built core 76 feet down and going nowhere. Santiago Calatrava filed an $11.34 million lien claiming Kelleher hadn't paid him for his design work. Within months, contractors, lenders, and the landlord who'd hosted Shelbourne's sales office all filed claims of their own, adding up to millions more in unpaid bills. Cook County records even showed delinquent property taxes on the site itself, enough that two local investment firms bought up the debt betting Shelbourne would never pay it back. And that was just the paper trail. In late 2009, the AFL-CIO, the country's largest federation of labour unions, considered lending Shelbourne $170 million in union pension funds to restart construction and create roughly 900 union jobs at a time when Chicago's construction unemployment was nearing 30%. The investment funds tied to organised labour ultimately declined the deal. Retirement money that belonged to working union members came within a signature of being tied to a tower that was already failing. By October 2010, Anglo-Irish Bank filed a $77 million foreclosure lawsuit against Kelleher directly. A Cook County judge appointed a receiver to take control of the site. The hole stayed open because the money problem never closed. By 2013, Anglo-Irish Bank's assets, including the Spire loans, had been transferred to Ireland's National Asset Management Agency, the state body created to absorb the country's bad property debt after its banking collapse. Kelleher tried to buy his own loans back at a discount. Court filings say the deal fell apart during final negotiations. His loans were then transferred again, this time sold to a buyer called RMW Acquisition for $57 million less than what Kelleher claims he had offered. Kelleher later filed a $1.2 billion lawsuit against the Irish agency in an Illinois court, alleging its conduct was willful and malicious and that it cost him over $500 million in cash and equity, plus roughly $685 million more in future profits he says he was owed. He also claimed the agency's handling of the deal cost Irish taxpayers tens of millions of dollars in the process. A federal judge dismissed the case in 2019, though Kelleher's attorney hasn't ruled out an appeal. The tower he lost was never built. The lawsuit over losing it asked for twice what he originally owed to build it. That's the part almost nobody outside Chicago ever heard. A $57 million discount erased Kelleher and built the skyline he lost. The buyer behind that sale wasn't finished with Chicago. That buyer was controlled by Stephen Ross, the real estate billionaire who chairs Related Companies, the same firm behind Hudson Yards in New York. In 2014, a year after his company acquired Kelleher's defaulted loans, Related Midwest Ross's Chicago division took direct ownership of the site itself and shut down talk of reviving the Spire for good. The hole had sat there for over 15 years. A 76-foot deep scar 2 blocks from Lake Michigan, on the very ground where the Chicago River meets the lake. The site where Jean-Baptiste Point-du-Sable, widely credited as Chicago's founder, built the area's first permanent settlement in the late 1770s.
The developer behind a proposal to build 2 soaring skyscrapers sharing these images tonight. Now, these towers would stand on the site where the Chicago Spire was originally going to be built.
Their new plan, unveiled in 2018 and named 400 Lakeshore Drive, wasn't one mega-tall tower. It called for 2 towers positioned to reshape the skyline, framing what the architects described as a new gateway into the city. It was 2 skyscrapers, one with a hotel and condos, the other planned at 765 feet with rental apartments, designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill under architect David Childs, the same architect behind One World Trade Center.
It's an extraordinary place. The river comes down and enters the lake. That's an extraordinary motion, but it also happens to be a place of memory where the city itself was founded.
Local Alderman Brendan Riley rejected the first version, outright demanding the removal of every hotel room in the plan and a smaller base between the 2 towers. The City Council approved an updated design in June 2020 in the middle of the COVID pandemic, but construction still wouldn't restart for years.
Something finally coming to fill that hole in the ground.
After many, many years. Yeah. So there was a groundbreaking today at 400 North DuSable Lakeshore Drive.
Construction finally restarted in 2024. Crews faced an engineering problem nobody had solved before, building a brand new tower inside a hole designed for a completely different one. First, they pumped out roughly 3 million gallons of water that had collected in the pit over the years. A sewer line running straight through the site had to be relocated. More than 600,000 pounds of steel reinforcement went in, next the weight of about 150 cars. Over 12 hours straight, 250 concrete trucks arrived one every 2 minutes, pouring 9 million pounds of concrete into what's called a mat foundation, a single thick slab designed to spread the tower's weight evenly across the old crater. Engineers reused many of the original caissons drilled nearly 2 decades earlier for the spire, cutting out months of excavation. By April 2025, crews were pouring a new concrete floor roughly every 3 days, climbing toward a finished height of 858 feet and 72 stories, with 635 rental apartments, about a fifth of them set aside as affordable housing for lower-income residents. Its architect David Childs died in March 2025 at age 83, before construction on the tower he designed was complete. As of early 2026, the North Tower was still under construction and nearing its full height, with completion expected in 2027. The South Tower, planned at about 765 feet with roughly 465 more residences, still had not broken ground. Related Midwest has said that decision depends on market conditions once the first tower is finished and occupied. Nobody has promised it will happen at all. You just don't know who else is quietly buying someone else's failure. This wasn't just a failed real estate deal. It was a system that let one developer borrow against a foreign bank's balance sheet, build a public reputation on a private gamble, and walk away when it collapsed, while architects, contractors, and nearly a union pension fund absorbed the fallout. Nobody who signed off on it unanimously was ever asked to justify it. Was Kelleher a visionary undone by a financial crisis nobody saw coming, or a developer who bet other people's money on a tower he could never have financed alone? Both readings fit the same set of facts. The same pattern is already sitting in permitted plans in other cities right now, tucked inside filings nobody outside the industry reads. The project you just watched took years to fail publicly. The next one on this channel took longer and cost more. Subscribe, because by the time it makes the news, it's already too late. Comments are open. Name your city.